Another interesting thing that you often see is so for example, let's take this Amazon website search that we've been seeing for a while. When I search for t-shirt, it says we have over 50,000 results, right? So how did this number come about? Imagine, this is a very important piece of information. This tells us how many shirts are there for me to pick from. Similarly, if in our movie example, imagine I want to know how many movies, how many movies, how many movies are present in my data set, in my IMDb database, with a year with a year greater than 2000, which means which are released after 2000. If I want to know this information, where do I get it from? How do I want to find the number of movies that have been released, which are there in my database after the year 2000. For these types of operations, for these types of information in SQL, we have something known as aggregate functions. Okay, so aggregate functions, what they do is this. They compute a single value on a set of rows and returns the aggregate value. For example, imagine if you have a table, right? A table is nothing but a set of rows, right? You can perform some operator, some aggregate operator. I'll show you what aggregate operators are. This is performed on all the rows and you get only one value as the result. Let's see an example so that you better understand it. For example, if I want to find in my movies table, if I want to find, so we have these are the aggregate functions in SQL. We have count, min, max, sum and average. I'll explain each of them. Okay. So suppose if I want to find, so in our movies table, we have the year column, right? If I want to find the minimum of all, so in my movies table, I have lots of other columns, but there's a column called year. If I want to find the minimum value amongst all of these values, right? In this column, there are multiple rows here, right? Amongst all of these values, if I want to find the minimum value, what do? You can simply say select min year from movies. So min here is the aggregate function. Year is the variable or column name on which we are computing the minimum value. And select basically means that we will print the minimum year from movies. So let's actually run it and see what the output we can get from this. Okay, let's go here. Okay, if I just run this, yes. So the min year that I get, see what I get is a single value, right? This is my whole table. This is my year column, and there are multiple rows in this. So it took a set of rows, and this aggregate operator min returned only one value for me, or one aggregate value, right? So what it is returning, it's saying the minimum year, the minimum amongst all these year values in my table movies is 1888. So min here is a very simple operator, right? Similarly, let's go here again. Let's go back here. If I want max, I can do it. Now, if I want to find out, so just like min, you can compute max. You can also have, so min is simple, max is simple. Sum basically means it sums up all the values in the columns. Average basically means it computes the average value. These are numerical operators. Sum and average are numerical operators. Min and max are sort of like comparisons because you're trying to find the minimum and the maximum value. Count is one of the most important aggregate functions or aggregate operators. Let's see how it works, right? Suppose I have my movies table here. What if I say select count star from movies? So what it does is star basically means what? All the columns. So it will pick all the columns and it will say how many, what is the count of rows that is there in my table, which has all, the star here basically means all columns. So take the table with all the columns present and how many rows are there in that result set or table. That's what it's saying. Count basically counts the number of rows. So if I now just take this value, if I just take this, okay, if I execute it, what do I get? I get the fact that there are 388,269 movies in my database, right? Very simple. The same thing, I could have modified it slightly by saying, Okay, so I know that there is a column called year, right? So if I say count year from movies, okay, instead of count star basically what does it do? It takes all the columns. It takes all the columns. So it takes all the columns and it now counts how many rows are there. Not distinct rows, just number of rows that are there. Similarly, when I say count year from movies, let's see the result that it will generate. This generates exactly the same result as count star. So when I say select count year from movies, what does it do? It first takes the year column. It first takes the year column and now it counts how many rows are there here. The number of rows in the year column is same as the number of rows in all the columns. That's why you get the exact same value. Right? It's exactly the same value. Nothing changes. Right? So whether you use count star or count a column name, doesn't matter. Everything will work the same. Right? No major difference per se. Right? Now, if I want, so let's look at this example that we wanted to look at, right? So if I want to find the number of movies, right, the count of number of movies where the year is greater than 2000. Let's see this, right? Because this will tell us how many movies are there in our database, right? Which are, whose year of release is greater than 2000, not 2000, greater than 2000, right? Here we have this comparison operator with where, and we have the aggregate operator here. So we have total of 46,006 movies in our database which are released after 2000. This is very, very useful. Count is extremely useful, right? So just like here, if you look at the Amazon page also, you could have gotten this. So probably there are more than 50,000 results. So they don't want to exactly tell you the number of results because Amazon might value this as very business critical information. So they'll just say you have more than 50,000 shirts, which anybody will be overwhelmed with. Nobody can look at 50,000 shirts and pick up. So all that they're saying is here is you have 50,000 plus shirts which you can pick from. And this is extremely useful information for the customer because it tells them that there are tens of thousands of shirts that I can or we can pick from. Right? Very useful. So count is extremely useful in the real world of using databases.